Attorney Davis, is that?
The republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are going to start with the oath. So our newly elected board member.
And re-elected board member. Go this way. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and the State of Indiana.
and the State of Indiana.
I will faithfully execute
I will faithfully execute
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as a member of this governing body,
as a member of this governing body.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
When's payday?
6 months from now. Okay, let's start with roll call.
Mr. King,
Here.
Ms. Beatty,
Present.
Ms. Farley,
Present.
Mr. Arnold,
Present.
I am present, Vice President Jackson,
Present.
President Seaver.
Here.
We are all present.
Okay, so the first order of business is the election of officers. Does anyone have a motion for a slate of officers or an officer?
I would like to have a motion to the slate of officers.
Okay,
I would like to slate Ryan Seaver as president, Amy Jackson as vice president, and Justin Olmquist as secretary.
second to that?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other motions for any other slates? Hearing none, all those in favor of that slate of officers of Ryan Seaberg, Amy Jackson, and Justin Almquist, say aye. Opposed? All right. Well, congratulations or condolences, however you want to view it. These are the new officers. So the next order of business is you have in front of you a recommendation for a bunch of appointments that Dr. Wood has made. So I'm going to read these out loud. So the appointment of the school corporation treasurer, Jane Grillo. The appointment of the school corporation investment officer, Jane Grillo. The appointment of the school corporation deputy treasurer is Natasha Henry. The appointment of legal counsel, board attorney, and chief negotiator is William Kaminsky of Newby, Lewis, Kaminsky and Jones. The appointment of legal counsel, special education is Church, Hiddle, and Antrim. The authorization for the treasurer and deputy treasurer to invest corporation funds is Jane Grillo and Natasha Henry. The appointment of executive secretary to school board of trustees and appointment of information request officer is Tammy Van Hook. The establishment of board meeting times and dates. Regular meetings will be held on the second Monday of each month at 6 p.m. Board members should keep the first Monday of each month open for work sessions and or special emergency meetings. I will note that this does not conflict with Fair Week this year. The establishment of board member pay, how do you say that? Remuneration pay. Each board member will receive $1,200 remuneration per year, $1,000 per regular board meeting, and $50 for special meetings. Meetings held on the first Monday of each month will not be eligible for the $50 stipend. The appointment of representative to the LaPorte City Park Board, Ryan Seaberg. The appointment of representative to the Library Board, Amy Jackson and Tucker King. The appointment of legislative and policy liaison to the Indiana School Board Association, Jim Arnold. The appointment of representative to the LaPorte County Redevelopment Commission, Jennifer Farley. The appointment of board liaison to the City of LaPorte Redevelopment Commission, Jim Arnold. And the appointment of Board of Finance, board officers. Does anyone have any?
Just one point of clarification, you misspoke and said $1,000 per meeting, it's $100 per meeting.
All right, fair enough, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, you're welcome.
So for clarification there, it's $1,200 per year plus $100 per regular board meeting and $50 for special meetings, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so any other questions or comments on any of this? Hearing none, does anyone want to make a recommendation to accept this?
I recommend that we accept.
All right? Or
Second.
motion, yep.
Motion.
Yep,
Second.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's all set. So, I would be seeking a motion to adjourn. That's the only other thing we had to do in this reorganization meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Amy.
Second.
Thank you for a second, Jen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so the reorganization meeting is closed. So we are going to call to order the Board of Finance meeting, Monday, January 13th, 2025. We've already said the pledge, so the first order of business is roll call.
Mr. King? Here. Ms. Beatty?
Present.
Ms. Farley?
Present.
Mr. Arnold?
Present.
I'm present. Vice President Jackson?
Present.
President Seaver?
Here.
We are all here, 7-0. Still.
So the first order of business is to establish the 2025 Board of Finance and Resolution. Dr. Hunt.
President Seaver, by statute, that Board of Finance for a school corporation has to meet in January, and we are fulfilling that obligation by holding the Board of Finance meeting. You have already done this as far as the formal approval in the reorganization meeting, which was the establishment of the Board of Finance, which is the Board of Trustees for the school corporation. I asked this evening, basically what you will do is just sign the resolution that is attached to your board cover letter that's associated with Indiana Code 5-13-7-5, again, which is the establishment of the Board of Finance. And what this really does is just a formality of just proving again that the Board of Finance was established. And so you will see that resolution that should be attached again. It just states that the Board of Finance has been established.
Do you have any questions? Anyone want to make a motion to accept the resolution to establish the Board of Finance?
So moved.
Thank you, Jen. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the resolution is passed. The next order of business is the interest income report and investment policy approval. Dr. Hunt.
Thank you again, President Seaver. Again, we're going back to Indiana Code or statute at the Board of Finance meeting. It is a requirement of the school corporation to review the investments or the interest earned during the 2024, the year prior. And that's what you have in front of you this evening. You'll have two in your packet. You'll have the first, which is actually the overall interest earned since 2020, and then you will have it broken down, that interest earned by month for the year of 2024. This again is for your review, and again, just to be clear, one year I really want to go back to, obviously this year in 2024, the interest earned during this particular year, which again we had very favorable rates to adhere to as far as our interest earned. We earned $921,902.90 from our interest. I want you to go back to 2021 to review what we earned as far as interest in 2021, which was $1,434.27, a huge increase. Again, the rates were very favorable, and so we're very excited to be able to report the interest earned for 2024 against $921,902.90. The one action item that we do have this evening, again, part of your, as part of that interest income and investment policy, is the approval of the investment policy. I will state that this investment policy has not changed from the previous year. It is the same as what it was in 2024. But I like to have this investment policy reviewed and approved annually. And so I ask that the board approve the investment policy. Again, this has been actually established by not only us as a school corporation, but it was reviewed and suggestions made by our financial consultant, which is Baker Tilly. So just for your knowledge as well, it adheres again to what practices we need to follow as far as investments are concerned for a local community school corporation. But I ask that you approve the policy as submitted this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Hunt? Hearing none, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the investment policy?
So moved.
Thank you, Amy. Second? Thank you, Justin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. So the next item is the financial conditions report.
Again, President
Dr.
Seaver,
Hunt.
we're gonna stick with the common theme as that this is a requirement by Indiana code, and this is a requirement by Indiana code. I want to give a little bit of background. Obviously, those of you that have sat on the board before have gone through this presentation and understand the reasoning behind this presentation. But for Mr. King and Ms. Beatty, I want to make sure that I share the information with you as far as the reasons why this happens. There was what's called a Distressed Units Appeals Board, which is known as DUAB. They were established in 2018, and the purpose of DUAB is really to look at the financial conditions of school corporations across the state of Indiana, but any type of what they consider qualitative information that would be provided in which that they can see a potential problem or issue with school districts. And again, the reason that this was established, I'm not picking on school corporations, but Gary Community School Corporation as well as Muncie Community School Corporation found themselves in some financial difficulties. And so the whole purpose of DUAB again is to try to be transparent in reporting out the financials and the conditions of the school corporation in which to prevent any sense of urgency that would need to take place as far as changes to the finances so that, again, a school corporation could carry on as being solvent. And so this will constitute what is the requirement set forth again by Indiana Code. And it's Indiana Code 5-13-7-8, which requires each Indiana Public School Corporation to present a written report on these indicators for review for public school board meeting in January. And again, we are satisfying that requirement by this presentation this evening. The other thing that I want to bring to the board's attention, this is not financials that are from 2024. This is from financials of December of 2023. I will share the financial basically as part of my financial dashboard this evening where we finished up the year 2024 because it's good and the board needs to be aware of where we stand financially in 2024. But DUAB puts these reports out. What they use, again, there's fiscal indicators that you will see as part of this presentation that I will share with you. I will comment on some of these. And again, keep in mind that this is from 2023, and I will be reporting on 2024 following this particular report. So, Tammy, if you don't mind, if you would go forward. I had already talked about this. This is the Indiana Code that requires us to have such a presentation, again, in a public setting. Next slide, please. If you don't mind, if you would click on that. This is, when we talk about DUAB, there's actually, if you do a Google search for DUAB or Indiana DUAB, you will see these particular, now again, we have to do a search. It comes out obviously alphabetical. It starts with Adams Central School District to begin with, but as we go to LaPorte, you can select LaPorte. And you will see these are what are called the fiscal indicators. These are what DUAB look at, and they look at it not just in the current year, but they'll look at trends and some of the trends that they may see happening so that they're able to report. Again, let us as a school corporation know if they see if there's any issues, but again, it gives us the opportunity as a school district to basically report on such fiscal indicators. I'm not going to go into, I will go into each one of these as part of my presentations, but just for example, if you would go to for instance, the revenue by type, Tim, if you don't mind clicking on that one, this is what I wanted to show the board, that when you go into these reports, you will be able to then get very specific information. If you would then point to one of those categories at the top, Tim, if you don't mind, go over, there we go. You will start to see details by each year and amounts. It will be that's very similar to each of those fiscal indicators that you will see. So you have the ability to really dive in deep. It's not just a snapshot, but it really dives in deeper into the information as far as those fiscal indicators are concerned. I just wanted to show the board that, and so when you go into those reports and look at those fiscal indicators, you would be able to understand that there's specific information that you would be able to draw out of the report instead of just looking at a graph like we're looking at right now, that you would be able to see that specific information in regards to the years. So, if you go to the next slide, please. As you saw in the fiscal indicators that I was mentioning on that DUAB report, you're going to see each one of these within the presentation, between the slides. This is a very basic one, but it's a very important one to understand. And again, we're going back to looking at 23. And so the ADM count, which is the average daily membership, and you've heard this before, we are being able to receive revenue from the state, and it's based upon our ADM. It's per pupil allotment. Those are the individuals that either live within our district or they have open enrollment and they are, again, enrolled into our district. But you'll see the number 5688. That is the ADM for, again, school year 23-24. One of the other very important information that you want to take note of, and that is the 2024 net assessed valuation. And as I go through the reports in the future, you'll start to get very familiar with some of this terminology and understand what these really represent. The net assessed valuation is really the property taxes. So we, as a school district, we are able to obviously get property taxes that generate revenue for our debt service fund and our operations fund. And those are based upon that assessed valuation. It's per $100 of assessed valuation is how we start to calculate out what that is. So it's important to make sure that we keep an eye on our net assessed valuation. If we start to see a decrease in our net assessed valuation, we need to take caution and be prepared as far as the revenue sources for that debt service and the operations fund would be decreasing. And then of course the estimated population. Again, this is a brief overview of our school district, but in the report, estimated population is 38,892. The average daily membership I had mentioned, which is, again, ADM, referred to as ADM. You'll hear in most cases, you'll hear to me refer to it as our ADM. One thing that to note, that again, the ADM in 23-24 was 5,688. Please keep note that that's 461 students less than 2015. And again, there's a per pupil allotment that is given based on the ADM. So you start to calculate out, this is in current state, which means that if we stayed neutral as far as our ADM was concerned going back to 2015, we would have had $3.91 million more for our education fund. But again, in the decrease, based upon that ADM, there's an amount that's associated with that. And again, it's important for DUAB or the Stress User Appeals Board. They note that because again, that is a revenue source. And again, it's important for us to keep tabs on that. One thing I do want to mention is that the first grade that we had during this period of time was by far the smallest class that we had. So again, that was a trend. And for the first time, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but just for the board's knowledge, that this particular year, so the school year 24-25, for the first time we had under 400. Now, in our kindergarten class, we've never had a class under 400. This was the first time. And that isn't really associated more or less by the birth rate. Obviously, if there's the number of students that are fewer that are going to be coming to our schools, obviously we have to account for that, but we have to account for it fiscally and looking to the future and what kind of adjustments can be made based upon that decline. One other factor that I want to make mention to the ADM is that our junior class currently, so those students that will be seniors next year, that is by far the largest class that we have in our district. And the reason I bring this up is because we have to prepare and moving forward in the future in that adjustment by that particular class. Because if you have a small class coming in as kindergarten and you have your largest class moving out, there's a large adjustment that would need to be made as far as our per pupil allotment that we are giving. And again, when you say, don't say this as far as emergencies, but I do say this as far as planning, and you start planning for the budget. And one last thing, and you will see this a little bit, it's kind of harder to see, but you'll see a little bit of different colors towards the top of those graphs. And those account for our virtual students. And those virtual students, thank you for zooming in, you'll see that those, again, those bars like have an orange and a yellow. One represents the fall, one represents the spring ADM counts, because there's two counts. There's a count that takes place in the fall, which is October, and there's another count that takes place in February. And again, the revenue that we receive from the state is based upon that ADM. But the virtual students, the reason it's important to keep this in mind is that we get 85% of that ADM allotment for those virtual students. That's across the state. That's not just relegated to LaPorte, that's across the state. But that is something to keep in mind as far as, again, as we budget and moving forward. So, next slide, please. Fund balances. The one caveat to this that you're going to hear me stress this, obviously time and time again. The laws changed. Back in 2019, we used to have what was called the general fund, and the general fund could be used for a number of different categories. One of which is our operations, what is now our operations fund, a portion of that. That changed. And when that changed from the general fund, it moved to the education fund. And so that allotment that we get for the ADM is coming from the state. It is now not referred to as the general fund, that's referred to as the education fund. The reason that this is important is because prior to that change, we were able to spend out of the general fund for costs that were operation in nature. I'll give you, for instance, for that, I'm not picking on this unit, but our custodians, so our facility, our custodians, our maintenance, our utilities were all paid out of our general fund. Also, we were able to supplement what was at the time called Capital Projects Fund. We were able to supplement our utility costs. We were only given so much for utilities in our Capital Projects Fund. And what we weren't able to cover in our Capital Projects Fund, we were able to supplement out of the general fund. And again, the reason I bring this to the board's attention is with that legislative change between the general fund and the education fund, they limit us to the amount of transfers or expenditures from the education fund to the operations fund. At the time, prior to the change, we were paying over 22% of our operation cost out of the general fund. State statute said that we had to limit that to 15%. So we lost 7%, and it doesn't seem like a large amount of money. But if you equate 7% to what our current education fund is, it's over $3 million that we took a hit on is when we had to transfer that over. The reason I bring this up, because we had to make some adjustments, and we have been making those adjustments, which again, I'll show you in our financial dashboard. And that could not happen overnight. Those were large expenditures. Again, we had to account for that in moving forward, but that is something that we had to adjust. And again, based upon this, if you look at the fund balance in at the end of 2023, December of 23, our operations fund budget balance was $157,790, which was significantly lower than what we had 4 years prior. when adjustments were being made through those particular funds. And so again, that has to take some time in which to adjust. We've made those adjustments, and I will bring this to the board's attention when we do that financial dashboard. But the board, in their good judgment, had set an operations, not operations fund, but an operating, it was an operating balance resolution that was passed. At the time, it was 30 to 35%. So in other words, what we wanted to do as a district is carry an operating balance of 30 to 35%. A really, really prudent, and where we should be is at 25%, and I think that we're going to be getting there. We're not there yet, and I'll show you, but we're moving in the right direction as far as that is concerned. But those make up, when we talk about the operating balance, we're talking about the rainy day fund, the operations fund, and the education fund. So with those three, what we want to do is whatever we're, have budgeted for the operations fund and the education fund, we would like to have, at least bare minimum a 25% operating balance. One other thing I want to bring to the board's attention as far as the fund balances are concerned, you will see some negative balances up there with our federal funds. Understand something, with our federal funds, those are reimbursable. So depending on the timing of that, it may look as though we have a negative balance because we had not received our reimbursements at that point based upon the expenditures from the previous month. But I did want to bring that to the board's attention. Next slide, please. As we talk about the annual deficit surplus, again, going back in history and looking from years 2014 to 2019, again, this is when we had the general fund, the capital projects fund, bus replacement fund, and the transportation fund. We had a surplus at that time of $6,098,072. So again, we were in the good that amount during that period of time. Years 20 and 23, again, those years are really significant because again, we start talking about those changes in the fund structure and how we're able to spend or transfer a certain amount. We had a deficit at that time of $4.2 million. We're still in the good based upon the previous years, but again, adjustments had to be made during that time. They've been made and moving forward. So again, if we look at what was in surplus and then what was in deficit during those periods of time, we're still at $1.88 million to the good during those periods of time. But again, as we look to have that operating balance and getting to the point we need to be, we had to be very cognizant of obviously the deficit surplus. So next slide, please. This is another really, really good indicator, and it's going to go hand in hand with what I have been discussing. If you wouldn't mind, Tammy, blowing that up a little bit so it's easier to see. What you're going to see as far as those, if you move it over if possible, there we go. You will see at the top, we were at a 33.3% operating balance. This is where we want it to be. But again, as we started moving forward with those adjustments to those funds and had to account for how we had to do things differently, you'll see a decline as far as that is concerned, to the point where we were down to, in 2023, a 13.8% operating balance. We're still working in, obviously we had a balance there, but it's not where we need to be as a school district, again, to account for as we look forward. The question is why do we need to carry a balance? Well, those are for emergencies, so if there's any changes, anything that needs to happen, especially in our operations fund. I didn't have this as part of the slide, but for your knowledge, in our operations fund, we had gone down to under 1% operations balance as far as our operations fund is concerned. And the reason that is really, really concerning, and again, why we had to make adjustments in moving forward, is again, if we have, for instance, a boiler that is going down, we have to make sure we have proper funding in which to account for that, to be able to obviously fix that boiler and moving forward to make sure that our schools are operating efficiently. Again, we have made those adjustments, and again, I will show that to you in our 24 balances. But again, where we would like to be as far as the district is, again, in the bare minimum of a 25% operating balance. And again, we're trending in the right direction, as you'll see in that 24 budget presentation. And I already mentioned this, but a $3.17 million average basically is where we have lost as far as our operations fund is concerned. And that's been over the last few years since that change has taken place. So again, drastic changes have been made in moving forward, but that does not happen overnight. So that was a gradual move, and again, we're trending in the right direction. Next slide, please. Revenue by type. This is really a great slide to take a look at as far as trends are concerned, and you can look at that graph is to see where we were at as far as some of those funds, and these are all of our funds, our federal funds, our local funds, our state revenue, our tax revenue, and so any type of revenue sources that we have, not only for just the operations fund, the education fund, but all across all of our funds as far as the revenues that were taking place. But if you would zoom out, Tammy, thank you. Move up for a moment. And again, these really do indicate the trends that we do have. The one thing again, and I haven't mentioned this yet, that as we look at the operations fund, we are impacted by what's called the circuit breaker. And so that will account for this last year of $2.4 million. And so we get what's a tax levy, what we should be getting in local property taxes for our operations fund. But when we look at the tax cap, so if you think about your residents, you can only pay 1% of the assessed valuation in property taxes. And if it exceeds that 1% of what would be needed to make up that levy, we lose that amount. And so in this particular case, we've lost, last year $2.4 million. So if you think about the operations fund, and that's the only fund that this is associated with, is the operations fund. So not only did we lose as far as the operations fund what we had in the general fund, but we also lost in a circuit breaker $2.4 million on an average on the last several years as far as the operations fund is concerned. So again, we have to make adjustments to account for that and making sure that we're staying within the revenues that we have coming in. The other thing that I wanted to make mention too is ESSER dollars. You will see that, and that's the stimulus money that we got. That is basically a one and done. That's not a continual revenue source that we have, but according to the this revenue by type, you will see here, you will see that funds accounted for in that revenue type. But again, we do not have those funds going forward. That was for a short period of time. Next slide, please. This is something else I want to bring to the board's attention as we look at averages across from 2014 through 2023. Federal revenue, so our federal grants that were coming in average as about an increase of about 4.4% per year. Our state revenue on the average during this period of time was about 2.3% increase by year. Our debt revenue, so the amount that we have coming in for our debt service, was an average of 5.6 per year. Local tax, this is the one I need to bring to the board's attention, and that is an average of 1% per year from 2016 through 2023. The reason I did not go prior to that is because there was a lot of reconciliation back in the days when we had our property taxes that were delinquent, that we did not receive, and what you would see was a large dollar amount that was coming our way based upon that reconciliation. I did not account for that because, again, that was an anomaly. That isn't something that happens on an annual basis that we can account for. It happened because we had not received our property taxes the way that we should have received our property tax revenue. And so that 1% average on an annual basis goes back to the operations fund. I'm going to keep it. That is the one fund. And we're not alone in this. This is something that a lot of school districts across the state are dealing with. But when you have utility costs that are exceeding and going up over 5% on an annual basis, sometimes 20%, the purchases of school buses going up over 20%, we're not keeping up with the revenue that we have coming in, we're not keeping up with obviously those increases. So that's something that we need to keep in mind as we move forward and we budget. The real easy one, this is based upon any revenue that a school district has for an operating referendum. We have not had an operating referendum, so that accounts for any revenue that we may have through that operating referendum. And of course, we have not had one, so it's a straight line, it's a zero. But I wanted to make sure that I reported that to the board. The things that also take into consideration is the qualitative measures that DUAD may take a look at is a failure to make required contributions or transfers, issuance of judgment bonds, missed debt payments, missed payroll, past due vendor payments, any findings related to financial condition of the school corporation by the Indiana Education Employment Relations Board. We're not in any of those categories. So as far as that qualitative measure is concerned, we are above board in a good shape. That is a lot of information to share in a short amount of time. But again, I wanted to make sure that I was able to highlight, that is that's calendar year 23 budget. So I'd open to any questions that any of the board members may have.
Questions, comments? Okay, I think we're good. Let's
Okay.
move on to 2024.
Yes, we will. And so this is where we have been doing this past year, which is a financial dashboard. So Tim, if you would mind bringing it up, please. I would like for you, and I know it's hard to do going back and forth, but keep in mind some of those balances that we had at the end of calendar year 23. One of those balances that I will bring to the board's attention was that $157,000 in our operations fund, as again at the end of December of 23. But as you look, we'll start with the education fund. Again, we had a goal that we had set of 92% of the overall budget for the operations fund. But in December of 2024, thank you very much, we had expenditures of $2,936,829.34. Which again brings us to a total amount of expenses for fiscal year, excuse me, I keep talking fiscal year, but calendar year budget 24 of $41,221,139.88. The overall budget that was expended was 93.5%, so we were slightly above, in good shape, but slightly above the goals that we had set forth for our education fund of 92%. As we move on to the operations fund, we had a goal of 93.5% of budget expense during that period of time. In the month of December, we spent $2,154,970.86. The reason is if you look at the other months and why in December, why was it so much higher? And that is when we pay our liability insurance for the upcoming year. So our liability insurance was about 5% higher than the previous year as far as the expense was concerned, but that's why that amount in December was higher. So we had a total expenditure for calendar year 24 in our operations fund of $16,193,468.06, which brought us to a goal of, actually the total percentage of 97.37%. Higher than where we were wanting to be, but again, a lot of that has to do with the utility costs increasing, but still well within the budget of 100%. We're well within that, so. And then the final slide for the board, and again, this is really where, keep in mind as we look at the financial conditions from calendar year 23 to calendar year 24. The actual receipts, this is for December. Actual receipts for the education fund were $4,228,787.23. Our cash disbursements was $2,936,829.34. And our ed to ops transfer was $634,183. The one amount, and this is the reason that this is highlighted, and again, I'm gonna go back to state statute or the requirements through Indiana code. Because we've moved away from textbook rental, there's our textbook rental fund that we would pay our textbooks from that had to be closed out at the end of December of '24. The amount that we transferred over to the education fund was $809,532.17, which then gave us a cash balance at the end of December of $8,500,614.45. For comparison reasons, I did say below it, without curriculum materials transfer, we would have had a cash balance of $7,691,028.28. Actual revenue for education fund for the 12 months was $49,725,147.56, and total actual expenditures of $48 million, which includes the ed to ops transfer, $48,547,573.80, which we had a gain again. The majority of this was through the textbook rental, not all, but we had a gain of $1,177,573.76. That's for the education fund. For the operations fund, cash receipts for the month of December, $3,518,933.93. Disbursements of $2,154,970.86. And the ed to ops transfer of $634,183, which then gave us a cash balance at the end of December of $1,420,199.86. Rainy day, there was no revenue in the month of December for rainy day, so ending cash balance of $613,837.47. Which gives us a grand total between those three funds, and this is what really generates the operating balance percentage. We have an ending percentage of 17.36%. In the operations fund, we had actual revenues for '24 of $17,455,877.96. Expenditures of $16,193,468.06, when they gave us a net gain of $1,262,409.90. And then the rainy day of $15,569.50, and again a gain of the 2024 through all three of those funds of $2,455,553.16. There's two things I want you to keep in mind, where that balance was in our operations fund at the end of December, again being $157,000, and now in that in '24 we are at $1.4 million. That puts us at about 8.3% of our operating balance for our operations fund. Again, we want to be at that the statutory limit on the operations fund is 15%. But again, we are trending in the right direction. That 17.36% again is trending positively for us. But again, we would like to be or need to be at that 25% to have that 3-month operating balance. Again, a lot of information, but I wanted to make sure I had those two comparisons where we were at in '23 and we're trending positively in '24. But I will open up for the board to ask any questions.
I'd like to make an additional comment just specifically about the operations fund.
Yeah.
And if you're on that DUAB website, you can go through and manipulate those charts and the graphs and pull out different funds. What we presented tonight was all funds together. We would be here for another 2 hours if we went through every fund and showed you all of those, but you can do that from home in your spare time. But specifically with the operations fund, I think it's really important for us to highlight, if you go on that DUAB website and pull out only the operations fund from 2023 and look at that percentage of cash balance from the operations fund at the end of 2023 was less than 1%. So we had spent down the operations fund at that point to less than 1% of the total revenue. And in looking at where we closed
Correct.
2024, with Dr. Hunt reporting, we're now at 8.3%. That is a testament to the work that this corporation has done to redirect the ship. We're moving in the right direction, and it shows. There's evidence of that now, that the steps and the pieces that have already been put into place are heading down the right track. 8.3% is still a far ways from 25%, which is the goal of where we need to be. But we're taking steps in the right direction, and it's a testament to the hard work of this board in recognizing that things needed to be redirected and starting that process at the beginning of this year.
I do have one thing to add too, and when we talk about operating balances too, we don't know what's gonna happen in this next legislative session, we don't. This is the budget session, we have no idea where we're headed. And I do have some concerns, and again, associated with the operations fund and how some of the things that we're able to do right now through debt service, that we may not have that capabilities. So if we don't establish ourselves in having that operating balance, we're gonna put ourselves back into a position where we were before. So we need to be proactive and looking ahead. That's why that operating balance is so important.
Excuse me, does anybody have any questions or comments? So I appreciate the work that we're doing. I know it's hard and I know it's not popular, but it's necessary to be done, and I'm glad that we are able to have a surplus for this year. It's been a long time since we've had a surplus, and I'm glad to know that we are moving in the right direction. And I appreciate the hard work you guys have all done too, because I know it's not easy. Okay, so the next order of business is the 1782 notice report. Dr. Hunt, this is the last agenda.
This is the
item for
last,
this
I'm gonna go through this really quick. In fact, I can tell you this, 1782 notice, what that is basically, it's a preliminary of our budget. So whatever was submitted to the Department of Local Government Finance, that was what we received back in the 1782 notice. You will notice in your packet, that 1782 notice, there had to be a reduction in the rate was reduced based upon the assessed valuation. So assessed valuation went up, and so in which to meet where we could be, the rate had to be reduced as far as the maximum levy that we had. So that's where the 1782 notice comes in. We have 10 days to review this, at which time we can make adjustments or we can sign off and send it. We again worked with Baker Tilly, our financial consultant, making sure we didn't miss anything. We didn't. We moved forward, we signed that, and then prior to me submitting to the board packet, this is why this was a late submission, was again, was actually the budget certification that we do get from the Department of Local Government Finance. That is part of your packet as well. And you can see that we are certified, our certified budget for 2025 is debt service at $9,796,786. Education fund $43,224,828, and an operations fund of $17,103,697. But I did want to make sure that I added this to the Board of Finance report so that you knew where we were going forward for budget year 25. And so that does complete the report.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Hearing none, does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Justin, a second.
Second.
Thank you, Amy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so what do we have? The Board of Finance meeting is adjourned. Does anyone need to take a break? Good, all right, let's drive on. All right, so call to order the school board meeting for Monday, January 13th, 2025. We have already said the Pledge of Allegiance at a previous meetings, so we're gonna go move to a roll call. Secretary Holmquist.
Mr. King. Here. Ms. Beatty.
Present.
Ms. Farley.
Present.
Mr. Arnold.
Present.
I am present. Vice President Jackson.
Here.
President Seaver.
Here.
7-0.
All right, we have no public comment tonight, so we're gonna move to the consent agenda. So we have 6 items in the consent agenda. So the approval of minutes of the December 9th, 2024 school board meeting, the financials for ratification and approval, the treasurer's report, the personnel recommendations and travel requests, the administrative salary ranges, and the updated wage and benefits schedule. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Amy. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Jen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, there's 2 items that require special attention. These are both personnel recommendations that you have in front of you. So personnel recommendation 1, does somebody want to make a motion to approve personnel recommendation number 1?
So moved.
Thank you, Justin. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then there is so it passes. So the other item is another personnel recommendation number 2. Seeking a motion to approve personnel recommendation number 2.
So moved.
Thank you, Jen. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that one passes as well. Presentations.
We have no special
There's no
presentations this
presentations,
evening.
okay. So next item is the superintendent's report. Dr. Wood.
Thank you. I have a few items that I'm going to present this evening. So the first item that I want to begin with is an update on our transition timeline for the changes we're working to implement for the 25-26 school year. Are we able to get the timeline on the screen here just so we can follow along with the visual? As a reminder, the timeline is posted to our website and it is updated in real time as we move through the months. You'll be able to check back here to keep in the loop with our progress. So, as you know, we presented the board the timeline last month. So we began at the month of December and now we are moving, of course, into January. So a few of the items here listed under January will be brought to the board for approval this evening. The other items aren't items that necessarily require board approval, but will be items that we'll be working on throughout this month. So I'm going to provide you with an update on all of those. So tonight we will be recommending for board approval the updated district boundaries for the 3 schools that will be incorporating students from Lincoln Elementary into the 25-26 school year. So families will be receiving an email this evening with links to the new district maps. And students who attend Lincoln will receive a personalized letter in their folders to go home tomorrow confirming the school that they'll be attending next year. Please note that the information that we are approving tonight does not include transportation such as bus route numbers or walking zones. Those are on the timeline later to be approved in March, so we'll be working through those things with our transportation department in the coming weeks. In conjunction with assigning Lincoln students to their new schools, the students who are currently part of the Special Education Emotional Sensory Communication Program, which is currently housed at Lincoln, will be relocated to Kingsbury Elementary for the 25-26 school year. So families in this program will also receive communication in an email tonight, as well as in the students' folders tomorrow with specific details about this transition. We are currently in the process then of conducting several meetings with stakeholder groups, which you'll see these outlined on the timeline in various capacities throughout the month of January. So a brief update on that. As of today, we've met with 14 staff members at Lincoln in individual meetings to discuss the transitions. These meetings are continuing this week, and by the end of the week, we will have met with all staff who signed up to meet with us to discuss the transition for next school year. We have also scheduled the focus group meeting for those who signed up to participate, and that is scheduled for Wednesday, January 22nd. We are also scheduling a Lincoln parent meeting for Tuesday, January 28th, which will be at Lincoln Elementary. This event is going to consist of a meet and greet with the principals from the schools that the students will be attending next year. And it's also going to include an opportunity for parents to ask questions or share thoughts regarding the transition for their students. So the details on this event will be included in the letter that is being sent home to families, both in the email tonight and in the hard copy letter that they receive tomorrow. The principals from Hanley, Heilman, and Riley, along with Mrs. Wireman from Lincoln, all met last Friday. They've begun to work on a draft for a comprehensive transition plan to support students throughout the semester with various transition activities. So we have the ability to be able to develop a very robust plan for a transition for the students that will be attending a new school for next year. And so we intend to capitalize on that as much as possible to be able to build in as many activities for transition for these students as possible in the coming months. We will share with the board an outline of an overall transition plan for students at our February board meeting. Then finally, in conjunction with the CTE Center and Early Childhood Center components of our district's plan for 25-26, I would like to schedule a work session with the board for later this month to discuss the final items on the January checklist, which include officially naming the CTE Center. So we've sort of had this building purposed as a CTE Center since last year, but we've never given it an actual title and an actual name. And then in addition to that, the Early Childhood Center as well, to formalize a name for both of these facilities. And then also listing the programs for the 25-26 CTE pathways that we will be offering to students, both in this building and programs that we are expanding for eventual expansion into this building at the high school. So we can discuss at the end of the meeting the date that would work best for the board for that work session. But we would hope that we can schedule that sometime around the end of the month. The second item that I would like to share with the board this evening, this is a timely topic to follow the information that was presented by Dr. Hunt in tonight's Board of Finance meeting. We received notification last week we did not meet the DOE funding floor expectation. So to provide a little background on that, the funding floor was established in Indiana Code in 2022. And it sets the expectation that school districts should not spend less on teacher salaries and benefits than in the previous year. So we're required by Indiana Code to present this information to the board and include it on our website if we do not meet that expectation. So in our case, as we've been discussing and as we've looked at some of the financial concerns that we've been working through as a district throughout the last several years, we did expend less on teacher salary and benefits in fiscal year 2024 than we did in fiscal year 2023. This is in line with our fiscal planning goals as we are working to right-size our district. So again, I would reiterate that this is an expectation set forth in Indiana Code that applies to all school districts that have specific needs to right-size or downsize their facility. Oftentimes end up receiving this notification, but as we work to be fiscally responsible, that was expected. We knew that this was coming. And so we're following the expectations set by the DOE to disclose this information in a board meeting. It will also be published on our website. Just to reiterate, the action the board has taken in this regard has been long overdue as we've experienced a decline in enrollment over the past 10 plus years. And as we continue to move forward with additional right-sizing initiatives, we are going to again probably have this come up in the coming years as we work to get our district in the right spot. There is no penalty for not meeting the funding floor requirement. We just simply have to disclose this information in the meeting and post it on our website. If you have additional questions on this, either myself or Dr. Hunt would be happy to provide some additional insight into this information. Lastly, I have an exciting update. So in conjunction with Erin Meyer, our Director of Communications, we are working, as you know, on a number of marketing initiatives, and one of the new initiatives that we're embarking upon this semester is a district-wide podcast. So we have decided to launch a podcast for our district. Our first episode will be released January 24th, so we are really excited about this. The podcast is called Inside LaPorte Schools. It is going to serve as a platform for deeper discussion about education here in LaPorte, and it will showcase the daily experiences, challenges, and successes within our school. Our first topic for our first episode dives into the issue of the Kesling campus and specifically challenges, concerns, and opportunities that have come up with the establishment of the centralized intermediate and middle school. So as you know, the topic of the 5th grade has often been something that's been brought up as a concern. So we do a deep dive in this podcast into that topic and dig in a little bit. It's actually a 2-part series. So episode 1, which will be released on January 24th, is part 1 of that conversation. And then the second episode will release a week or 2 after that. So please watch for the release of our podcast episode. And we're really excited to be able to continue this throughout the rest of the year. We have a number of new topics that we'd like to dig into, and it's a great way for us to hear some of the voices within our district. We plan on incorporating student conversation as well as staff to be able to provide an insider look into what goes on at LaPorte Community Schools. So, and that ends my report.
Where do you find that podcast? Will it be on the website?
We will blast it out as much as we can with links from our website, from our social media. It will be on all of your popular podcast platforms like Spotify and those So this is a new endeavor for us,
Yeah,
so
it's
so we're learning as we're going along, and it's actually been really exciting, and we think that this is a really unique way to get out some of the information that we want to be able to share with our community.
Very cool.
Do we have any questions for Dr. Wood? Okay, thank you for your report. Moving on to the elementary assistant superintendent's report, Dr. Tom.
Yeah, good evening. I wanted to recognize our LaPorte High School Athletic Department. In fall, the IHSA announced sportsmanship scores after the fall season, and LaPorte High School is one of the highest scoring schools in the state of Indiana. IHSA started this program to recognize leadership, sportsmanship, amateur athletics, get away from some of the professionalization that's happened with travel sports and with sports at the college level. So you can get points for leadership by your students, referees submitting exemplary performance reports by coaches and players. You can do courses. There are different ways to beef your score up, and there's different ways to deduct from your score, getting ejected from a contest, technical fouls, all those things that we don't like to see in LaPorte. So I'm really proud of all our fall programs. It's not just one program, that would be across the department. So that's some good news. Secondly, our Kessling Intermediate staff and Mr. Williamson are planning transitional meetings for all our fourth grade students as they get ready to transition to fifth grade. As we know, that period of time for a student presents many challenges socially, academically, emotionally, and so I commend Mr. Williamson and his staff for starting to look at transition activities, getting to know staff, building rapport with students, talking about expectations at the Kessling Intermediate School, procedural things. So they're starting those. Those start tomorrow, I believe, and go over the next few weeks. We've advertised that with our parents, and we're going to probably blast something out again tomorrow. We want 100% of our families to attend these meetings so that they can learn firsthand what it's going to be like for that transition. So we're starting earlier this year than we have in previous years, and I think that's a good thing. We do track our data, number of kids that continue on from fourth grade to our fifth grade, and we have last year and the year before, and the year before that, data that we can compare to. So we hope to capture more of those kids and build the trust with parents that they can come into our fifth grade and know that their kids are taken care of. So all that starts this week, and there'll be many more activities besides that. That's just the kickoff. That concludes my report.
Awesome. Any questions for Dr. Donovan? Questions, comments? Okay. Dr. Hahn, I think you said your piece. Is that fair? Do you have more?
Yeah, I said more than my piece
Okay.
this evening. Next 3 months, man, I think we're covered.
So I think we're good there. All right, so next is new business. So in front of you is an agenda item to add. This would be 7.06 on your list.
Should be eight,
Yeah,
but
it should
it's
say
seven.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so the,
It's 8:06.
okay, the consideration for the recommendation for the ratification of the School Custodial Alliance of LaPorte Working Agreement. So we want to add that to the agenda. So can we have a motion to add it to the agenda? Thank you, Jen. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Justin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're gonna dive into new business. First, the consideration for the recommendation for approval of LaPorte Community School Corporation district boundaries for the 2025-2026 school year. Dr. Wood.
Thank you. So in your board packet this evening, you do have the updated maps that outline the proposed boundaries for the 3 named elementary schools that will be adjusted as we incorporate students who currently are attending Lincoln Elementary. One of our primary goals through this transition process, which goes into place for the 25-26 school year, is that we wanted to be able to define these new district boundaries for the 3 elementary schools as soon as possible so that we could maximize our time during this semester to engage in comprehensive and robust transition planning for our students as they are preparing to attend their new school. So this evening, we're presenting to the board updated boundary maps for Hanley, Heilman, and Riley Elementary Schools. To reiterate, this would go into effect for the 25-26 school year, so next August. These maps were drawn in conjunction with our transportation department as well as with consideration to overall student numbers as we looked at class sizes and sections and so on throughout each of the 3 schools. So I'll share a few numbers with you, but please be aware that the numbers are based on current numbers, and since we're talking about a plan that will go into effect for next year, this will fluctuate because we don't know the exact number of kindergartners that will be coming in next year. And based on the number of 4th graders that'll be transitioning to Kessling, all of this could shift a little as enrollment fluctuates with new students moving up through the ranks and coming in kindergarten. So based on numbers as we have them now and the students that we know will be attending these schools next year based on the redrawn boundaries, the enrollment for the 3 schools will increase by the following. So Handley will increase by 25 students, Heilman will increase by 84 students, and Riley will increase by 8 students. So overall enrollment for these 3 buildings then would take Handley up to 353, which places it at 86% capacity. It's at 84% capacity right now. Heilman moves up to 379 students, placing it at 77% capacity. And Riley moves up to 266 students, putting it at 67% capacity. So I wanted to share those numbers specifically with the capacity percentages just to showcase that all 3 of these schools have plenty of space to accommodate these students and many more. So again, to reiterate, email will be sent out to our families at the end of this meeting with links to the new boundaries, so families will be able to see those tonight. Letters will be sent home with students at Lincoln tomorrow in their folders with specific information about each child's new school. As we mentioned previously, also we're planning a parent night event at Lincoln Elementary on January 28th for families to come and meet the principals of the new schools and share their thoughts and ideas about the transition. I do want to point out a couple other items in connection with this recommendation. First is just a reminder that no other district boundaries were changed through this process, so it's only the Handley, Heilman, and Riley boundaries that were modified to encompass the additional area previously districted to Lincoln. Second, transportation routes and walking zones have not been finalized at this time. Our transition timeline specifies we'll have that information finalized by March. We know that families are going to be anxious to know this information, and we're working hard to finalize that as quickly as possible, but we want to make sure that we're considering all options as this is a significant safety concern that we need to take into consideration. And so we're looking very closely at all of that, and we'll have that information available by March. And then finally, as mentioned previously, students who attend the Emotional Sensory Communication Program at Lincoln will be attending Kingsbury next year. Those students also receive an email tonight as well as information in their folders tomorrow with more details about their transition.
That's it?
That's it?
What is the, anybody have any questions besides me? Is there room is room okay at Kingsbury for the?
Yes, so currently Kingsbury is at 53% capacity. So there's plenty of space at Kingsbury. That was one of our primary concerns in looking at placement of the Emotional Sensory Communication Program. We do recognize that that program was a new program to Lincoln just 2 years ago. So as we thought through this process, it was very important for us to ensure that the decision that was being made now was one that would be longstanding into the future. And so the selection of Kingsbury for this partially took into consideration the ability for that program to even grow beyond what it is now and have plenty of space to do that at Kingsbury.
Great. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, so we'll look for a motion to recommend the approval of the district boundaries for 2025-2026 school year.
So
Thanks, Jen. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Amy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next order of business is the consideration for recommendation for approval of position of Director of Student Support Services for 2025-2026 school year.
Thank you. When I came into my position last July, one of the very first things that I learned coming into the position was that our Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education at the time had recently announced her retirement. And so that left a vacancy within the district of that Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education position. So at that time, being new to my position and also recognizing that at that time we were already halfway through the summer and we had just a few short weeks left before the school year would start, I asked the board at that time and also had conversation with our administrative team to provide me some time to determine how we would move forward in replacing that position. I was hesitant to just go in and say we're going to replace the position exactly as it exists right now, partially due to the timing of the vacancy, but also I wanted an opportunity to be able to examine the organizational structure of our district and determine if that particular position is actually the right fit for the district as we move forward with some of our goals. So now that I've been here for about 6 months, I've been able to analyze our administrative structure, and I've also spent a lot of time comparing our organizational structure to that of other districts similar in size to ours. And so as we move forward with some transition planning for next year, I am asking the board tonight to approve a change of our administrative structure, which I believe is going to streamline our district level leadership and move us toward a model that emphasizes K through 12 district-wide leadership. So as you know, previously our district level leadership was overseen by an assistant superintendent of elementary education and an assistant superintendent of secondary. My proposal this evening combines all leadership positions to K through 12 oversight, which I believe is extremely important for the transition of our students as they move from kindergarten all the way through to graduation. So my proposal includes eliminating the position of Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education. We would move forward then with a model that contains only 2 Assistant Superintendent positions instead of 3. And that would be the 2 positions held by Dr. Hunt and Dr. Tonigal. Through this reorganization, however, the Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education title would change to the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, which further allows for streamlining that industrial leadership model to the K-12 setup by assigning oversight of the following areas to 1 person instead of splitting that between 2. Curriculum development and planning, teaching and instruction, professional development, data analysis, academic intervention programs, and school management. So there are a number of things that I think we will almost immediately see coming together in a much more cohesive manner as we have one individual overseeing the oversight of these programs from kindergarten all the way through to upper level of high school. I do want to emphasize that this change for Dr. Tonigal's position is a change of title and job description only. There is no change in compensation, contract benefits, or anything related to that. It is simply just a restructuring of the areas of oversight that he currently is managing. So in reviewing the needs of our district as well as the alignment of our programs from that K through 12 perspective, as we start to shift to looking at this as an overall oversight K through 12, I've noticed that there are a number of additional organizational areas within our district that previously required coordination amongst multiple positions. I believe that we can streamline these and better serve students by combining the oversight of these areas under a single director position. So my proposal this evening is to establish the position of Director of Student Support Services to achieve this goal. So the job description for this position is included in your folder, and it would include leadership in the areas of English language learners, high ability, school safety, STEM education, online education, and student support services. Again, these are all areas that were overseen previously through multiple individuals, but now as we streamline this and have one individual overseeing the K through 12 process and transition, I believe this is going to be a much more effective way to manage the support services that our students are receiving. So as we establish this new structure marked by K through 12 district-wide leadership, we remain committed to ensuring that all staff affected by the repurposing of Lincoln Elementary retain a position within the district, as well as to our overarching goal of maintaining sound fiscal management and conservative planning as we move forward. So my proposal this evening meets both of these goals through the following. I'm recommending that we repurpose one of our existing elementary principal positions to the position of the Director of Student Support Services. If the board approves this position tonight, we would post it internally. We have many talented principals within our district who are qualified to move into a K through 12 district leadership role, and we would intend to fill this position with an internal candidate. This ensures that all current principals retain a position within our district, as we've decreased the number of elementary schools within our corporation. So overall, the elimination of the Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education position and the transition of a current principal position to a K-12 district director position will save the district at least $150,000 annually. That's probably a low estimate, but I like to be conservative with my estimates, so we're estimating $150,000 annually. So I ask for your approval of this position so that we can begin the process of filling it for the 25-26 school year. This is again another initiative that would go into effect for next year. But we want to provide ourselves plenty of time since we are anticipating looking at internal candidates. We recognize there may be a domino effect that falls into place as we start moving people around, and we want to provide plenty of time for transition support with that internal move as we move forward in the next few months.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I just want to say that I think this is a really smart, well thought out move. I think structurally it makes a whole lot of sense. And obviously icing on the cake is that it's saving us some money annually, but you know, we're willing to spend the money we need to, but this leadership structure just seems to make a whole lot of sense. So I think it's great.
Can you articulate what you'll be doing?
Yeah.
How much time do we have?
Right, yeah.
Right, so overall, so we have a comprehensive organizational chart that is in place and will be updated for the board to see. So, you know, my oversight falls in regards to our 2 assistant superintendents. Also falling under my area is early childhood education, CTE. I don't have it in front of me right now exactly. Okay, there you go. I knew I wrote it out. Communications, special education, and human resources.
Right, okay. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Thank you, that's okay. I didn't have that exact document.
You had sent that out
I know.
earlier, I just wanted the public to know that
Yes, absolutely.
you're taking on some workload that
Yes, yes.
perhaps
yes.
the superintendent previously wasn't, so.
That is correct. This is also a change for my job description as well as what previously existed.
Okay, so any other questions? All right, so is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the approval of the position of Director of Student Support Services?
So moved.
Thank you, Amy. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Justin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item is consideration for recommendation to approve secure vestibule projects. Dr. Hunt.
Once again, President Seaver, this evening, I'm bringing to the board for approval the project of secure vestibules at 3 of our buildings. Just to bring the board up to speed, in 2020, we did have a facility study done by Schmidt Associates, our architect, in which they went through all of our facilities across the district and highlighting some of the concerns that they did see in our buildings. And one of those that were high on the chart was secure vestibules. This past year, we have a secure vestibule now at the high school, and at Indian Trail and at Riley. Those were done this particular year. What we're looking to is finish out the buildings that we have in the district, our school buildings in the district, which would include Kingsbury, Heilman, and Lincoln. I asked the board to approve the project. It's not the bids will be coming. They will be coming hopefully at the next board meeting, but this would approve the project, which we would be able to sustain Schmidt Associates as our architects in moving forward with this, as well as the legal advertisements for the bids that we have to do is according to Indiana code, that because they'll raise that threshold in which that needs to take place. But the estimate right now for the 3, including the architects, it looks as though about $375,000. Lincoln and at Heilman, Lincoln is really cut and dry, really should not be an overly difficult project. Heilman's a little bit more difficultly, but certainly we have things in line in which to do that. Kingsbury presents some different challenges, and that's going to be a little bit more expensive as far as the secure vestibules are concerned. So the board is being asked to just approve the project and moving forward with all necessary steps up into the bids or accepting and approving the bids for those projects. And I ask the board approval this evening.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Hunt? So this will be paid with?
This, thank you very much. It is part of my my presentation here, is actually be paid for the 2024 GEO bond. So we're not using operations fund, we're not using education fund, we are using GEO bonds in which to pay for these particular projects.
Thank you. Does anyone want to make a motion to recommend approve the secure vestibule project? So moved. Thank you, Justin. Second? Thank you, Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the next item is recommendation to reapprove the micro purchase and self-certification policy. Dr. Hunt.
Thanks again. This is a strange one, I understand, but if you look at your packet, this has been suggested by the State Board of Accounts in which this needs to be done. And this is really representing our procurement process, which would be our micro purchases. It's included in Neola Policy 6325. So what we're doing this evening is it has to be done on an annual basis. We've already done this, actually I think we did it back in May, but I want to get this on a calendar year, so every January we do this because we are going to have to come back and have to have approval for that policy. Even though the policy's in place, changes have not been made, but in order for us to adhere to State Board of Accounts for that micro purchase threshold, which is $50,000, and the self-certification, we do need to have this approved annually by the school board. So at this time, I ask that the board approve the Neola Policy 6325 as presented. There is a resolution that is attached to this. Again, I like to use those resolutions as proof to the State Board of Accounts that they have, the board has approved that threshold and that self-certification. So I ask that the board approve that this evening.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Hunt? Anyone want to make a motion to approve the micro purchase and self-certification policy?
So moved.
Thank you, Amy. Second? Second. Thank you, Tucker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 7:05, consideration for a recommendation to approve support staff raises. Dr. Hunt.
Thanks again, President Siebert, this evening. And this is keeping in line with all of the other raises that we have had. And it's been consistent across the board. It's a 1.25% raise, and this evening I'm asking the board approve this. This would be for our support staff. We've had that for our teachers. We ratified with our bus drivers this year. You will see in the next item, it was a ratification for our custodians. But this time, what this would allow us to do to give a 1.25% raise to our support staff that would be retroactive to January 1 of 2025. This is in line with what we have done in the past as far as the timing. It starts the new budget year, so at this time, I think that ask that the board approve that 1.25% raise for our support staff.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Hunt? Somebody want to make a motion to approve support staff raises?
So
Thank you, Jen. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Justin. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the next order of business is the agenda item, or the addendum that we added. So this is the consideration for recommendation for the ratification of the School Custodial Alliance of LaPorte Working Agreement. Dr. Nestor.
Thanks again, President Siebert. This evening, I want to kind of give the board an update of where we have been with negotiations with our School Custodial Alliance of LaPorte Working Agreement. We started back in October 16th of 2024 with an initial negotiations meeting. And the representatives from the School Custodial Alliance of LaPorte and bargained for that unit, and Ryan Kine, Terry Poynton, myself negotiated for the corporation. And we were able to then come to a tentative agreement on Friday, January 10th, 2025. And you will see that tentative agreement attached to this that has been signed by the parties mentioned. And the recommendation would be for the following this evening for the ratification for the Scout Working Agreement, which includes, number one, a wage increase of 31 cents, which is across the board. It's at 1.25%. There's that number again. Across the entire unit, that it would be a 31 cents per hour raise that would be retroactive to January 1st, 2025. It would be a shift differential of 25 cents per hour for our midnight shift at both the high school and at the middle school campus or Kessler campus. And then a severance pay increase that would be increased to $50 per day. But I ask that the board approve the tentative agreement as presented.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Hunt? We want to make a motion to accept this School Custodial Alliance of LaPorte working agreement.
So moved.
Thank you, Amy. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. So there is no other business, so we're gonna go to board comment. So, Dr. Hunt alluded to this earlier, so the legislature started last week, the long session, the budgeting session, so there's a lot of activity going on at the State House with in that long session. So one of the things that came out said there's going to be 1,100 to 1,200 bills presented, and 150 to 200 of those as education bills. So I've asked our ISBA liaison, Jim Arnold, every month he's gonna update us on kind of what's going on until May or June. So Jim, start out with that.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I'll keep it very short. As Dr. Hunt alluded to, this is a long session. They have to be up April 29th, so they've got a lot of time to do some damage down there. I'm sure they will. I spoke to a member of the Senate yesterday. Sunday morning, I called a member of the working in the Senate down there and found out about bills. As of then, they had 560 Senate bills filed, and I think Dr. Hunt and I talked about that. The filing period is over.
Yes.
They haven't fully tallied yet, but I think 898 that we discussed it tonight.
Yes, I'm
So-
understanding.
I will do my best to keep you updated on bills as they come out, along with Dr. Hunt, because he's right on top of things as well. So we'll work together on this and keep it, but I wanna tell the board, and especially our new members, there's some bills already been filed. One of them is through charter schools and eliminating 5 school systems in the state of Indiana. House Bill 1136. I filed with one of our neighbors right next door, we're in St. Joe County. So, whether that'll go through or not, I was asked today by another member of the, thought it would go through, it's at least gonna start the conversation. When they start the conversation, that means that they're gonna be talking about it, so we're gonna be very careful and we'll monitor this. And one of the members, by the way, on that bill is Representative Thompson, who's the head of the budget committee over there, so.
And if I may add, it's one of the districts involved is in our county.
In our county.
So we need to kind of stand together as a county, school districts, that we're gonna support that district.
Sure.
Right.
So I just said, be very careful of that, because we'll monitor that and give you updates if something comes out. Watch your email, because you get the school board news every Friday. Dr. Spradling sends that out and keeps us updated and so forth. And one thing another that they've had, I think 5 bills again to make school board elections partisan.
Right.
We want to stay clear of that. We're not in favor of that. We don't want to see Republican and Democrat representative board. We want independent thinking people for the school board. And so, but I will keep you updated about that as best I can, and work with Dr. Hunt, because he has a that as well. I want to thank you for the appointment to that committee. Oh, I have one other thing. I'm sorry. February 18th is the School Board Association Day at the State House. And I've been going since they instituted this thing every year. And now, President, I believe you can't make it. I'm talking to Tammy, and Tammy, you're gonna register me tomorrow, but we can take someone else. If someone is interested in going down there, the day at the State House is we go down early, we listen to the update, and they have usually the leader and assistant leaders of the Senate and the House talk about the education bill and so forth. And they have a lunch with our legislators. I already spoke to Representative Pressler yesterday. He's got it on his calendar. He'll be joining us. Haven't had a chance to talk to Senator Wahachik yet, but I will. But if there's another member of the board that's interested in going down, now for me, because I'm down there quick in and quick out. But after they have lunch, we generally go over to the State House. You get your picture taken out there in the hallway and so forth, a chance to see all the people. You just put a face with the name, so to speak. So if anybody's interested and thinks about it, let me know, or else let Tammy know so she can get us registered. That's February 18th, it's a Tuesday. It's a drive down, spend a day, and you'll be back usually by 4 or 5 o'clock at the very latest. If you're with me, you'll probably be back at 2 or 3.
Retired.
Yeah.
It has helped on occasion.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks, Jim. Anybody else have any comments or?
I just want to welcome our 2 new members.
For
Very
sure.
excited to have you. Yeah, lots of good things coming and we're very happy to have you part of the team.
Absolutely. So I want to thank Monica, you attended the ISBA new board member session on Saturday.
It was very, very good.
That's
I'm
awesome,
glad I went.
very
Very
cool.
informative,
Um,
as you said.
There is, just kind of laying this out, so the ISBA, the Indiana School Board Association, has a fall conference on, this year it's September 15th and 16th, so it's a Monday and a Tuesday. Lots of us have attended that in the past, it's really good, they have really good breakout sessions and a lot of good informative things, so if you can attend that, that'd be great. There are a lot of these things during the week, they, you know, if you have a job, it, you know, sometimes requires you to take off work, so, you know, sometimes you can't do everything, so, but as much as you could do, I think, is great, and that's a good thing. And then the last thing that I have is, was try to set a date potentially for this exec session and work session. So we're looking at the week of January 27th. So I don't know what people's availability are. You know, Jim, you have a conflict on the 27th, right?
27th, I'll be in Indianapolis.
Okay,
I do as well.
okay, so,
29th is no good for me.
what's that?
29th is not good.
29th is not, okay, so 28th would be a Tuesday, right? 28th or the 30th?
I could do either of those.
30?
Yeah, that's my big.
So Jen, how are you? Still looking?
The 30th would be better.
30th is better for you?
30th is good for me.
Okay, so I don't know where you guys are at. You got problems? Alright,
Just schedule it.
yeah, alright, fair enough.
You could say.
Fair enough. 30th is a Thursday, so Thursdays are typically not when we have meetings. Can we start early?
Yeah.
Can we start at 5 or
What time
4:30?
do you start, Ben?
Earlier the better.
The earlier the better.
How early could you guys start?
Just let me know.
I can be here anytime.
Yeah.
4 o'clock?
I can be here, but.
2 to 4?
Yeah.
4? So start exec session at 4 o'clock on the 30th. And then we'll have a work session 30 minutes later. Okay, so 4 o'clock on the 30th, exec session, and 4:30 work session. Target to try to be done by 5:30, 6 o'clock. Okay, all right, cool. All right. Okay, so, anybody got anything else? All right, seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Amy. Second?